Welcome to Ancient Awakening with Castalia. For those of you who don't know, I am Castalia, and I do work over at the Realm of Inspiration and ALPhianRealm.com to help inspire the collective on their ascension journey. And I am the host of this podcast. I work to help heal and guide through my channeled readings and coaching sessions. I am a certified card reader, channeler, and crystal Reiki master, as well as being well-versed and certified in Greek mythology and ancient Greek gods and goddesses. What better way to combine both of my passions than to uncover the spiritual metaphors hidden in the myths? The teachings and guidelines already are there before us, just hidden beneath the surface of stories full of tragedy, heartbreak, war, death, love, and more. The time for metaphors is done. So let's find clarity together through a transformative journey that is ancient awakening. So, in the tapestry of Greek myth, fate is the thread, but free will is the hand that weaves. The ancients believed in destiny, yes, but they also revered the power of choice. And with choice comes consequences. In this episode, we explore the sacred tension between fate and free will, where choice leads to glory, ruin, punishment, and transformation. The threads of fate and hands of choice, the power and price of free will, episode 8 of Ancient Awakening. But first, before we dive into the metaphors that I found in some of the myths that are related to free will in Greek mythology, let's talk about the journal prompts from last week's episode. Firstly, what part of me is in descent, grieving, lost, or buried? I would say, for me, the part of me that would be grieving, lost, or buried would probably be who I was before. I would say the version of me that did the theater arts would be buried. I also, the version of me who lived in the United States is kind of buried, or grieving the life that I had before. I've gone through the period of adjusting and learning to love the life that I knew that I would love. What's very fascinating is I did go through such a deep grieving process for my old self, but the choices that I made are me finally following my free will and what resonates with me. And the version of me that was honoring what other people wanted instead of what resonated with me is, I guess, lost, but for the better, is no longer at the forefront of my reality anymore. I thought that this part of me would be fun to mention in this episode, since this episode would be as an answer to this prompt, since this episode is about free will. That would be my best answer to that, my best summary of my journal response for that, because I did kind of go through what parts of me are, all three of these things, or in descent, grieving, lost, or buried, all four of these things. Prompt number 2 was, what am I searching for in my spiritual journey? So what I was searching for was that spiritual joy, that passion, that drive, that inspiration. Now I've kind of found it. What I am searching for now is how can I, now that I kind of understand a little bit about my purpose, how can I balance my purpose with having an income? How can I balance what calls to my soul versus what creative inspiration I have? How can I balance the reality of being, a channeler card reader, but also having a drive to uncover metaphors and myths? This podcast is how I'm doing that. So what I'm searching for is balance in my spiritual journey. I think that's what everyone's searching for, but I feel like at first I was searching for purpose, understanding, and now balance. Number 3, what does rebirth mean to me, and what must I release to rise? For me, rebirth means embracing change and becoming someone different, even if that's scary, and we need to release fear. Would be the biggest thing. That's my best summary of my response to this prompt. Overcoming fear. Overcoming fear for rebirth. And rebirth means transformation. Number 4, if I were an initiated Elfseen, what would I hope to see in the final vision? I actually I struggled with this because what I would hope to see, it took me a while to kind of figure out, because a lot of the visions that they saw would help them with the fear of death. I don't have a fear of death necessarily. What I would want to see is, I guess, confirmation that the work that I'm doing and the messages that I've been receiving and every guidance that I'm following that feels like it's in alignment with my highest self is real. Which I think is, in general, what a lot of people in my line of work would like to see, is that confirmation. Number 5, how do I honor the cycles of death and life in my own soul? I honor this by honoring transformation, by honoring rebirth, by honoring change, by doing little funerals for past versions of myself. I have also reflective rituals at the start of each solar year, each lunar year, each season, and my personal year for my birthday and my spiritual awakening anniversary. So I have multiple times throughout the year where I'm doing reflections and I'm seeing how I've grown, and I'm taking gratitude, and I'm setting intentions for the future and for growth. That ritual is something that is important. So, even just answering journal prompts, it helps to honor that, because the cycles of death is really the cycles of change, the death of the old and the birth of the new. That's kind of what this prompt is how do I honor the, death of the old and the birth of the new? And it's by honoring the old and being grateful for the old and setting intentions and hopes for the new. So, that being said, free will is a soul's sacred flame. In Greek myth, it burns bright, sometimes with wisdom, sometimes with ruin. Today, we will walk through stories where choice becomes transformation, punishment, rebellion, and revelation. So firstly, we're going to talk about the myth of Prometheus, not Persephone, Prometheus, and then Pandora, and then Ariadne, and then Tantalus, and then Apollo and Asclepius, and then Circe and Odysseus. So we're talking about today. I was thinking Persephone because, in conclusion with those 5 prompts from last week, Persephone is a case where her will was decided for her, because she used her free will and ate the food of the dead, and as a result is how she ended up being this representation of rebirth and cycles. So that would be kind of a cool transition there, because she has to honor both the light and the shadow of herself to be whole. She did use her free will, and she did eat the fruit of the dead. And her story is one myth that I considered doing for this episode, but since we kind of just a little bit talked about her in the special episode last week of Elfseen Mysteries, I want to do something separate for her myth. But there's a lot of that is a consequence of free will, of that choice, but for the purposes of this episode, her myth is one of my favorites. I've always been fascinated with it. Also, Pandora is as well, and I feel like Pandora is just a little bit more fitting for this episode. So I was between Pandora and Persephone, and if I was going to go with Persephone, I might not have done Prometheus. I would have done something else that's related, because I really want to Prometheus and Pandora. Those are 2 stories that are related to each other. So if I'm going to do one, I'm going to do the other. So firstly, Prometheus, the Titan who chose compassion over obedience. Backstory: Prometheus, whose name means forethought, was a Titan who sided with Zeus during the war against Kronos. But he grew disillusioned with Zeus's rule. Seeing humanity cold and helpless, he stole fire from Olympus and gave it to the mortals, a divine act of rebellion. Fire symbolized technology, warmth, and enlightenment. For this, Zeus chained him to a rock, where an eagle devoured his liver daily. Prometheus chose defiance for the sake of compassion. His punishment was severe, but his legacy is eternal. He represents the creative force of free will, the choice to suffer for truth. Prometheus chose pain over silence. This is the cost of sacred rebellion. He was punished for his actions by Zeus, but Zeus was in tyrannical rule and was definitely waiting and looking for someone to make an example of. And if he's willing to do that with a Titan who was on his side, then yeah, everyone should fear him. The other Titans who weren't on his side should respect his rule. I personally think in this version of the myths, in this phase of Zeus, he was waiting for someone to mess up so he could make an example. That is how I see this. I very much see it as the Machiavellian principle of being feared over loved in regards to politics and in regards to life in general, that it is better to be feared than loved. And Zeus definitely was creating that mission because, firstly, he could have given fire to the humans. Prometheus had to steal it to give it to the humans. Zeus was trying to be in control. That's a little bit, it's some control issues there. You cannot control people to conform to your will. You have to accept other people's free will. Zeus could have accepted Prometheus's free will choice and maybe seen the arrows of his ways, but Zeus would rather punish Prometheus than admit that maybe he was in the wrong to not give the humans warmth, but also like, in a little bit further depth of this myth, Prometheus was also seen as like he cared too much about the humans. And that was something that was made fun of. Which, without the humans, Zeus, you're not a god. Really. Like, if people are not worshiping you, you know, you're just an immortal. And you rule over the immortals. But without the people, you know, like there is something there where it's like eventually Zeus understood it, that if you're going to be the king of Olympus, if you're going to be the king of the gods, then humanity that you are creating, you should want to also take care of them. See, Zeus eventually realizes this and then decides to, in a way, take care of them a little bit too much and procreate a little bit too much. I genuinely think I'll have to do like a whole season going through Zeus's myths, having a little like board here, like when you're trying to uncover a crime, and I'm gonna have to, you know, figure out what exactly is his metaphor. What does he represent? Because Zeus has got a lot going on. Like, every myth is a little bit different, and I don't really understand what he is a metaphor of. It seems like he's a different person in most of his myths. So that's something as well. But in the case of this myth, he represents someone who wants to control other people's will, and when someone doesn't conform to his will, he will punish them, but that doesn't mean that the act that Prometheus did was wrong. Yes, is it wrong to steal, but it was kind of a Robin Hood situation. He was doing it for the greater good. Does that cancel out the act of stealing? Not necessarily. And that's where it's that gray area where this myth could have been told to kids. It's like, hey, even if your intentions are pure, you shouldn't steal things, which is a really good lesson. But in general, his rebellion was worth it. And he doesn't regret it. He didn't regret it. He made that choice, and he did it to help people. So, divine rebellion. That kind of leads into Pandora's story. So, Prometheus was the Titan who chose compassion over obedience. Pandora was the first woman and the weight of choice. After Prometheus defied Zeus by stealing fire for humanity, Zeus devised a counter-gift, Pandora. She was sculpted by Hephaestus, adorned by Aphrodite, and given charm, music, and curiosity by the gods. Her name means all gifted. Zeus is seeing what he's creating as a full punishment. I noticed that Zeus doesn't seem to like change, even though he was like a bringer of change. There is that a little bit. Like, I guess if someone wants to limit free will, they're not gonna like change, right? So she was sent to Prometheus's brother, who ignored warnings and accepted her. Pandora was given a sealed jar. Or I guess now they say it's Pandora's box, but yeah, it's technically a jar, containing all the evils of the world. Disease, sorrow, greed, and more. And was told not to open it. But she did. I mean, Zeus quite literally, like, you create a being with curiosity and then you give her something and say, you're not allowed to open this. I created you, I made you curious, and I'm giving you something that you are not allowed to open. And she's a fresh human. Of course she's gonna open it. And of course he knew that. Of course Zeus knew this fact. So then he is, in a way, trying to orchestrate things to be in accordance to his will. Yes, it was Pandora's choice. She could have chosen not to open it. She let curiosity get the better of her. That's her own journey. But he also kind of figured that that would happen. She didn't have enough time, you know, to, you know, the timeline of things. But it's not like she had enough time to develop as a human being, to understand how to control her curiosity. Virtually right away, she was given this thing and said, don't open it. And was also gifted curiosity. So she gifted the world chaos. But hope remained inside. So she closed the jar before hope could get out. This is holding on to hope. Her myth, I will do a whole episode about, because there's a lot of metaphors there. Pandora's act wasn't malice, it was human. Her choice, I want to point out how many stories there are in different cultures, and even in the Bible, of a woman's curiosity bringing evil to the world. Really? Like, really? Is it like, that's all I'm gonna say. As a woman, I don't appreciate being a scapegoat. I don't appreciate my female ancestors being scapegoats. I mean, what are the chances that in pretty much most cultures, and even in the Bible, it's the woman's fault. So that excuses why we don't respect women. Because if they use their brain, they're gonna do something stupid. There are other metaphors in this myth, but like also like, yeah, there's that part too. And I have to address it because it's like every time I read it, I'm like, of course this is like literally the ancient Greek version of Eve was Pandora, the first woman sent as a gift, brings chaos to the world when she was told not to do something and she did it. It is Zeus the serpent giving her the jar. Who knows? Or is he symbolic of God? Is that how we perceived God? In general. I don't know. There's a little bit more there. It was human. She made a mistake. It was a detrimental mistake, but it's not entirely her fault. Okay, because there's also, I'm going to touch on the Odyssey here. The Odyssey, to me, it's a very powerful Iliad. The more that I read it, the more I'm like, this is just the biggest excuse of a man. Like, why were you late coming home? Well, you know, see, after the war, I went here, and there was a Cyclops here, and then I went there, and then, like, well, all the gods were against me. Like, Poseidon was against me, and Athena, and, like, then I went here, and the wind gods were against me, and then I went to this island, there was this witch, and, like, I totally didn't sleep with her, even though he totally did, and Penelope finds that out later. And it just sounds like the biggest excuse. Sometimes some of these myths are like, okay, we get it. There's metaphors there, there's spiritual metaphors there, but also, it's kind of funny to also think of it in that perspective. I just have to say that if I'm gonna get through the Odysseus and Circe thing, because how do you, yeah, it doesn't make sense. Some things don't make sense. How do you explain these things? I'm trying to explain these things. Am I succeeding? Let me know in the comments below. So her choice unleashed suffering, but also revealed that even in error, hope survives. Hope survives. It prevails. She represents the naive but sacred power of choice and the irreversible consequences of curiosity. Curiosity is not bad. Why are we teaching people that curiosity is bad? It's uncontrolled curiosity. Correction. The price of uncontrolled curiosity. I'm at the point where, like, if I was handed a jar, and maybe it's because I'm not, like, just, like, newly created with the whole purpose of opening this jar, which is basically why she was created, because this is an additional punishment of Zeus. If he wasn't trying to make an example of Prometheus, why did he create such an elaborate punishment? To damn Prometheus to an eternal suffering of torment while he's alive, and then also punish Prometheus's brother, who had nothing to do with this. He was trying to make an example. So this shows like how kings will try to make examples of people so that they're in submission. Because you kind of read the myths and you wonder, like, why didn't, like, Ilios and Selene just be like, you know what, we're older than this kid. We don't want him to be, like, giving our powers to his kids who are, like, you know, just fresh off the block. Like, I want the sun, I want the moon, I am the sun, I am the moon. Like, why don't we just overthrow him? Well, of course, it's situations like this. Zeus in some way was a little bit more intellectual than his father in that sense, but then he did kind of lose some of his sense of reason, and that's how we have Athena in mythology. Curiosity in and of itself is not a bad thing, but see, if I was given something and I'm told not to open it, I want to be like, well, why? Like, why do you want me to open it? Like, why give it to me in the first place if you don't want me to open it? Like, keep it. Like, why? I don't know. There's different levels of curiosity. I think, like, critical thinking curiosity is wonderful. Naive curiosity, that's where there are consequences. Pandora didn't choose evil. She chose to know, and that changed everything. And she knew. I do really like this myth because it's a really great example of a myth trying to explain why all the evils of the world exist. Blaming it on a woman. Okay, I mean, did it have to be? Technically, it's Prometheus's fault. Actually, you know what? Technically, it's Prometheus's fault. Because Prometheus stole from the gods to give fire to the people, and that's why the gods created Pandora. So you know what? Actually, no. It's not a myth blaming women. It's balance. You know, the Greeks, we love balance. We love, like, symmetry. This is true. So it's balance. Both are at fault. Prometheus and Pandora. But Prometheus brought something good to the world, and Pandora brought something evil to the world. It's balance. Were they trying to condition not acknowledging the sacred divine femininity, but acknowledging the sacred divine masculinity? Because Prometheus has that. But then you think Artemis and Athena and Hera. Artemis and Athena. Hera a little bit. Hestia, for sure. Are these, like, strong female archetypes that are celebrated. So there is balance. It's not a full, like, hate parade in any way. Because honestly, a little bit of, like, the Zeus stories are kind of like, well, it's not that great. It's not that great. I think that there's something innately human about all of the myths. Like, that's why they feel like metaphors. Because, yes, the gods were very human. They were archetypes. They were symbols. I just think of them as characters. And that's how I see them. I see them as characters. The stories do hold a lot of power, and they tell you a lot about the ancient civilization. And I think it's like, okay, yeah, I made a joke about, yeah, let's blame Pandora for everything, but, like, genuinely, like, Spartan civilization was one of the few civilizations that, like, revered and respected women. Like, there was progress and creativity and change and philosophy. I mean, democracy, philosophy, geometry. I mean, like, pretty much everything that we know is thanks to the ancient Greeks. So there is innovative thinking. There is creativity. I mean, the myths. There is inspiration. There definitely is metaphors in the myths. There is, some of it has to be based in something. You know, some of the stories could have kind of been real. Like there were some ruins that were found recently that might have been able to prove that Troy was real and not just a myth. So there is something there. You know, there's something more there. If you take things at just face value, it's not going to mean anything. And in this case of Pandora, she saw that jar and she's like, well, I need to know what's inside. And you know what? Am I opening Pandora's? I should just have called this channel Opening Pandora's Box. I'm opening Pandora's Box by diving into the metaphors here. Unleashing something. I'm unleashing something. And you know what? I don't care. Because my authenticity is uncovering the metaphors hidden in this myth. I'm not unleashing evil into the world. My goal is to actually help us uncover things so we can overcome the darkness of the world. Even though I do struggle with that as well. But the more that I uncover the metaphors left by my ancestors in these myths, and I share it with people, the more I feel capable of overcoming the darkness of my own life. I think it is so beautiful that hope is what remains. Hope is what we carry with us, always. So Eridine is the next myth. And Eridine is another free will choice that is a rewarded and powerful female free will choice that does not make me really like this hero. And there was like, that the ancients like really did have hero cults in regards to like Hercules and Odysseus. I believe there was one for Theseus. I don't know why. To me, I mean, yeah, he did something good, but it really should be Eridine. She should have a hero cult because without her, he wouldn't have been able to succeed. So the thread of liberation, and this is about the labyrinth. I did a video over on the Realm of Inspiration about the labyrinth. At some point, I'm going to react to what I said in that video and add onto it because I did try this concept of uncovering the spiritual metaphors and myths over on that channel. It did okay. I didn't know how to continue that pattern over there. I felt like it needed its own space. So I spent a few years figuring out how to do and create this. So I will link it here for you to check it out to this video. So you can go over there and watch it. And then also eventually when I do the labyrinth symbolism, I will go back and kind of talk about that video a little bit and see what I found there and what I have found now. A little backstory. So Eridine was the daughter of King Minos of Crete, the king of the Minoans, which was one of the most ancient civilizations in Greece. And there were the Mycenaeans, and then, you know, the Athenians and the Spartans, the Corinthians, and the Delphians, and the Peloponnese region as well, where the Mycenaeans was. So the Minoans is one of the earliest ancient Greek civilizations. When Theseus arrived to slay the Minotaur, she fell in love with him and chose to help him escape the labyrinth. She gave him a thread to trace his path back. This was an act of betrayal against her father and her home, like the kingdom. Afterward, Theseus abandoned her. So Theseus was successful. He slayed the Minotaur. He stopped the reign of Minous, calling forth children yearly from the mainland to be punished in his labyrinth and feed the Minotaur. Theseus ended this cycle. It's very kind of like Hunger Games. I don't know if Suzanne Collins, the author of the Hunger Games, did take inspiration from this. I know it said that like she took inspiration from watching like war and politics flipping back and forth, but also this myth, this concept of Mino calling forth people from the mainland as sacrifice, as punishment for an act that they did that betrayed him. And it took like one rebellion to basically volunteer as tribute to be the hero to slay the Minotaur. That's what he wanted to do. And he did it, and it ended this reign of children being slaughtered to appease a king. It's there. The Greeks thought of it first. So Theseus did abandon Eridine in Naxos. So she helped him. She used her free will to betray her father and the island, her kingdom, to help someone that she loved end something that was cruel And then he abandoned her. Sometimes we use our free will. This is a lesson I'm learning. So learn it with me from my ancestors. We were learning it. That sometimes we give our all. We put it out there. Eridine, I resonate with her. I do, because I've done this where I've put my neck out to help a guy that I fell for, and I was burned in the end and abandoned in the end. I have done this. I think everyone's done this, whether it's with boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever, your partner, an ex-partner. I'm sure everyone has experienced this in some way, where you stick your neck out there, you do something because you really love and care for someone, and they don't appreciate it, and they end up discarding you, and that's a really hard feeling to comprehend, to understand. It's a hard feeling, right? To feel like, well, was I silly to help this person? I think the hardest thing to accept is when we use our free will to love someone. It's never wrong to love someone. If someone uses their free will to not love us and abandon us, that's them. That has everything to do with them, not you. It's what they're not feeling, not you. And sometimes this is hard to accept. And I've been told this where it's like, it's me. And you're like, oh, the media saying, oh, it's the classic, it's you, it's me. Well, that's, that doesn't mean anything. What is it about me? What is about me? It's definitely me. You're just saying that. This is how we're conditioned to think. But sometimes it quite literally is that case. Eridine did absolutely nothing wrong. So for him to be like, yeah, it's not you, it's me. Yeah, of course it's you. I did nothing wrong here. It's how you're feeling. Okay, you abandoned me here. That's your choice. It's your action. That's not a reflection of me. I didn't do anything wrong. Eridine here should be revered as the hero. She's the one who helps him. He could have died without her help. She's pretty much the reason that the Minotaur is not slaughtering children. In this myth, what people choose is not your fault. And what you choose, you must take accountability for. What you choose is nobody else's fault as well. So, Eridine was rewarded in a sense. Dionysius found her and made her his divine consort. Well, the man who abandoned you, who did not value and honor and respect you, I didn't think this was going to be a romance thing, but this is a little bit therapeutic for me. The man who did not honor you, respect you, or love you the way that you deserved, he left you right in the place of someone who would. Now, we're not holding Odysseus to be the standard of male. He's basically, other than Apollo a little bit in some myths, he's basically the Greek myth, Greek god Olympian version of a frat boy. He is the god of wine and theater and partying, basically. So that's what he's known for. It's not like he's the epitome. But if we can just see him as the metaphor of what you deserve, something more like divine love. He was considered divine, and he did honor her. He's how dare Theseus discard you? So the divine love you deserve. If we just see him as a symbol of divine love, the playfulness, the joy, the celebration that you deserve is waiting for you on the other side of you accepting that someone who didn't really see your worth abandoned you. See your worth, they didn't see you worthy for them. That's a them thing. You have your worth. Okay? Honor your worth. Someone's gonna come forth and honor you. If everyone honored your worth and every guy wanted you or every girl wanted you, then we don't have one perfect person for us, right? If in mythology, the Olympians needed to get it together and needed to hear me. If they were real, if they were real, they needed to listen to this. If everyone wanted you, then how do you have a perfect person for you? How do you trust that your perfect person doesn't want somebody else? It's not going to click with who it's not meant to. If we have one person who is supposed to match and click with us, then yeah, there's going to be a lot of failed attempts. Because if there is one person, I don't want everyone loving me and everyone wanting me. Like, I want to find the one that is like my clique, you know? So you're going to have people who don't see your worth, and that's okay. Like, you're going to have a guy or a girl or romantic partner not see your worth and leave. Or you might see one where you're like, this isn't working for me. This isn't the right situation for me. And you maybe, and maybe in some cases, and I've had this happen on both sides, where they do see your worth and they see that they are not a match for you. And they take care of themselves. Or you see that you're not a match for them and you're like, hey, no, this isn't working. Like, this isn't working. That's okay. That needs to happen for you to find your divine love. I guess in this case, for you to find your Dionysius and become a divine consort in this myth, that needs to happen. I've also have it where sometimes it's like, I used to think, and in one case I really thought like, it's because they don't see my worth, and it's, then they come and they tell me, like a year later, no, it's because I did see your worth, and I realized like, we were not a match. It had nothing to do with you. It quite literally had nothing to do with you. It had everything to do with me. We weren't a right match. And I'm like, you know what, yeah, you're right. Because if we were to try this again, I would be annoyed. And we did kind of attempt at it. It didn't work. Like, you know, it's these situations where if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. But Eridine is not wrong for loving Theseus even though he abandoned her. She used her free will and she helped humanity. And she was rewarded. So Eridine chooses love and liberation over loyalty and fear. Though she was betrayed, her choices led her to divine union. She represents the intuitive power of free will, the thread that leads us out of entrapments. Eridine's thread was not just a tool, it was a choice to free another and herself. She did free herself. So she left a kingdom that, I mean, she did betray, but she left that situation. She was set free from it. Theseus set her free and set her on a path that she was meant to be on, even though he betrayed her. He set her free from one situation and gave her an opportunity that she wouldn't have had to go to have another situation, another path that was actually the right one for her. So in that situation, maybe sometimes when we are discarded in a place that we didn't expect to be in, that place that we didn't expect to be in is maybe the starting chapter of where we are meant to be eventually. That is also important. We must honor and respect people's free will. We cannot control things. We cannot make people love us. We cannot make people not betray us. We cannot be a tyrannical ruler of Zeus or Kronos eating his children. We can't tempt fate. We have the power to control ourselves, our reactions, who we are. Really, the only thing we have control over is ourselves. There's quite literally nothing else in the world that we truly have control over other than ourselves and our own free will and how we respect and honor other people's free will. So, speaking of betrayal, is a myth that disturbs me. I don't know if it's a trigger warning worthy myth, but it's heartbreaking. Tantalus, the betrayal of sacred trust. There's a lot of people who don't trust in a higher power or who don't trust higher powers. There are some myths where the Olympians do, in a way, accurately represent the divine, this like symbolism and the metaphors. So this would be a case of this. Tantalus was a favored mortal who dined with the gods. But he chose to test their omniscience. See, Tantalus was a friend of the gods. He wanted to test them. If the gods favor you and are choosing to, give you benefits and care and let you dine with them, like if the divine is favoring you, is supporting you, is helping you, why would you want to test that? He let an intrusive thought win. he decided to test them by serving them his son Pelops as a meal. In Greek mythology, there were sacrifices of animals. Except for a few very rare cult cases in ancient times. Even though, as you learned with me in last week's episode, I don't entirely understand why they needed to do animal sacrifices. No judgment, but I guess for the case of the Eleusine mysteries, it didn't make sense. And some other cases, like, okay, that's just kind of what they knew, what they thought they were supposed to do. It was only ever animals. It was never people or children. There's very rare cases of that. That's not what they wanted. And this myth, it shows this myth exactly. This is a myth telling people you do not sacrifice someone else to progress. You do not sacrifice another human being. Now, there should be a myth telling people not to sacrifice animals. I don't think there's a myth for that. I could come up with one that is just quite literally, there is no excuse to slaughter and sacrifice an animal for a higher power because a higher power would want you to be loving and compassionate to all living things. That's the myth. That's the myth. We're done with metaphors. That's that. That's actually not a myth. That's the truth. The gods saw through the deception. So it's not only the fact that he sacrificed his own son, his own flesh and blood, it's that he tried to deceive the gods. And they restored Pelops and punished Tantalus with eternal torments. Food and water always just out of reach. This is another case, and I actually did think of using this myth when I did the 7 Deadly Concepts. I'm using it in this episode, so I don't think I'll use it if I do a part 2 of the 7 Deadly Concepts. But I find it fascinating that it's the pride and arrogance and ego leading to gluttony as a punishment. Like the seeking of wanting to satisfy a hunger, satisfy a thirst, and feeling like you never could satisfy it. I consider this. Now, the thing is the other myth that I did choose, he was actively he was actively eating. Like, he was actively being, like, gluttonous. In this case, Tantalus was tormented with food and water being just out of reach. So he wasn't ever able to satisfy his hunger. He was never able to be satisfied, to be happy. Pride leads to the consequence of you never fully being happy. Tantalus used his free will for ego and spectacle, violating divine trust. His punishment reflects the spiritual starvation that follows betrayal. Tantalus chose to deceive the divine and was condemned to hunger for what he once had. Yeah. Yep. That's that. Don't have much more to say about that. A different father-son story that's actually a little bit more touching is Apollo and Asclepius, the limits of divine intervention. Apollo's son Asclepius, known for being the god of medicine, became so skilled in healing that he began to rise the dead, violating laws of nature. Apollo, proud and protective, tried to shield him from divine punishment, but he did violate a law of nature. But also the gods restored Pelops, so were we being selective? Because Asclepius was a god as well, so we're being selective. Okay, but anyway, he did misuse his healing gifts. It's a different situation. Pelops was restored, because that situation was a little bit different. Asclepius was misusing his gifts of being the god of medicine to rise the dead. Zeus struck Asclepius down, fearing the disruption of cosmic balance. Apollo retaliated by killing the Cyclops who forged Zeus's thunderbolts. Yeah, Apollo really used his free will there. He was angry. He let anger lead him. It's very nice to see a myth of Apollo being like loving and caring towards his son and wanting to avenge him so much that he would kill the Cyclops. But also, revenge is never the answer. You can use your free will for revenge, but you're just hurting yourself more than you're hurting anybody else. Apollo's attempt to override fate shows that even gods must respect the thread. Asclepius' healing was noble, but it crossed a line. Apollo's grief reveals the pain of watching free will punished, even when it's used for good. Was Asclepius' intention of raising the dead for good? Technically, kind of, sort of, yes. But also, being the god of medicine, you should know that sometimes some people are meant to die and sometimes people are meant to survive, and if the fates already determined that they were meant to die, why are you messing with the fates? There is that. And that's what the myth shows. Like, you can't mess with what fate already decided. Apollo chose love over law and paid the price for protecting sacred will. He was trying to prevent the inevitable. You can't prevent the inevitable. When someone uses their free will and makes a choice that is breaking a law, you can't prevent the consequences. No matter how hard you try, you can't prevent them. And it's just better to accept that. And Apollo didn't want to accept that. He got stuck in anger and bargaining. He went through the stages of grief. I'm not quite sure if the myth, from what I can remember and from my research, shows that Apollo ever really reaches acceptance about this. The myths of Apollo, he changes a lot. Like, his character changes a lot. I would have to put everything in like an exact timeline and figure out the timeline to figure out when Apollo reached acceptance. And maybe one day when I do like the grief process shown in myth, I will take this myth of Apollo and figure out when he reached the acceptance process. But on to not accepting things is Circe and Odysseus, the seduction of surrender. So backstory, Circe, the enchantress who lived on Aea and lured Odysseus' crew with comfort and feasts. Those who surrendered their will were turned into pigs. Odysseus resisted, and with Hermes' help, broke her spell. Circe, impressed, became his ally and lover, offering him wisdom and rest. Circe's island is a metaphor for a spiritual sedation. Those who abandon free will become beasts. Odysseus' resistance shows the power of conscious choice and the transformation it invites. Circe didn't steal their will. They gave it away. Odysseus chose to remember who he was. This is a myth that shows when you just like kind of, okay, like you let go of your judgment. Like it's the good side of when you use your judgment and your discernment, you can prevent negative situations from occurring. Like you can save yourself. When you just, okay, like, just being sloth, being spiritually sloth, being sloth in general, like, okay, who cares? I'll just go with it. Yeah, this feels a little weird, but I'm just gonna go with it. When you're not using your free will, you're just kind of following somebody else, there is consequences for that. That's what the myth shows, the consequences of not honoring your free will. Also, Circe does try to just control in general. Like, she does try to keep Odysseus there. That doesn't end up working, but eventually Circe gets a happy ending. That's a myth story for another time. But Odysseus, he makes his choices. Like, he is of sound mind and body to make his choices. So I would really like to see him explain that conversation have that conversation with Penelope. Like, he used his free will. Because yeah, he used his free will to overcome getting cursed, but then he also became Circe's lover. Yeah, that's a choice. That's a choice. It's a choice that resulted for Odysseus in a son coming back to his island, them getting in a fight, and then in the moment where Odysseus is dying, them recognizing themselves as father and son. That's what ends up happening, is he ends up having another son and ends up dying as a result. So he also experiences some consequences of that free will choice of cheating on his wife. There is that. There is that. There is repentance for that. What you do will come back and find you. You cannot hide the truth forever. There's also that aspect I wanted to include. Xerxes' myth is a mirror. When we abandon our will, we lose our form. But when we choose truth, even enchantment becomes transformation. Free will is not a guarantee of safety. It is a call to the soul. Prometheus chose pain. Pandora chose curiosity. Ariadne chose love. Tantalus chose ego. Apollo chose protection. Circe offered illusion. And each choice shaped a myth, just as ours shape our lives. So ask yourself, what do I choose? And what do my choices create? This is a rhetorical question, not a journal prompt, but just think about it. And that being said, let's go to our affirmations for honoring the sacred thread of choice. My choices shape my soul. I choose with courage, clarity, and compassion. Free will is my sacred gift. I honor it in myself and others. Even when the outcome is uncertain, I trust the wisdom of my inner voice. I do not fear consequences. I choose with truth. I release control over others and reclaim sovereignty over myself. My will is not a weapon, it's a prayer. I am the weaver of my thread. I walk the path I choose with reverence. The journal prompts for next week are, what does life mean to me? And where in my life do I feel most empowered to choose? Number 2, have I ever opened a metaphorical Pandora's box? And what did I learn from the consequences of that choice? Number 3, when have I used my free will to serve something greater like Prometheus? And what did it cost me? Number 4, have I ever denied someone else's agency, even subtly? What did that teach me about control and fear? And number 5, where am I currently ignoring or suppressing my own free will? And what would it take to reclaim it? So those are the journal prompts that we will discuss next week and will be in the description and on the community page for you to answer to, and we can talk about it. And I love reading your comments, so I would love to see your responses. Now it is time to decide what next week's episode is going to be. So I'll shake the cup. We're gonna leave it up to the fates. I could use my free will and just like randomly pull or just decide what I want. Not randomly pull, but decide what I want. And I'm using my free will to trust the fates. Now, okay, we have this. So next week's episode will be something in myth. Oh! Lower self in Greek mythology. Tantalus would be an example of that. Lower self in Greek mythology, that will be next week. So I will find some myths and we will find how the lower self and the negative impacts, the consequences of following the lower self, how that is shown in myth. And I can guarantee you that I am not going to be just pulling from myths related to the underworld, because the underworld is not where the lower self resides. The lower self resides within us. So that's also going to be, it's a little bit different than the ego, the lower self. So you're going to find out more about that next week. Until then, let's use our free will to activate and understand and awaken the ancient wisdom left before us by our ancestors and the ancient ones. Until next time, may you continue to seek awakening and understanding of your higher truth and the wisdom that was left before us.